we talked about child development, and most all of you, and you're, whether you're in psych or social work or some other form of this human services, you've had child development. So now this is in practice why it's really important to understand what's happening. So I use the Erickson model of psychosocial development to understand what happens. Because we talk a lot about our caregivers with the chronological age versus actual age or experiential age that our kids have, because it's very confounding, because why? Kids are all over the place, right? Well, as you get older, you realize that no matter what your age is, you're somewhere else. I had a birthday the other day, and I'm like, really? Because I act like I'm about 25 years younger than that. Kind of thing. Until I rode a horse the other day and I went, whoa, I haven't rode a horse for a long time. So my body wasn't the same about that. Anyway, so if I look at Erickson's psychosocial stages of behavior, I often use this stair step because Erickson had 8 stages of development. And then he got to be older. He lived into his 90s, so he added a 9th one. So I'm really happy about that. As I get older, it's nice to know that there's still, he called it, of course, very old age. Well, very, very creative way to think about that. But this would be kind of the normal developmental trajectory. So you have infancy to 2. These are just approximate. 2 to about 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 10, 11 to 13, 14, 15, and 16, blah, blah, blah. We just keep on going up with all these different stages. I mean, we know that here's where the adolescence hits. Here we know we're in school age. Here we know we're in preschool. We're in toddlerhood here, and we're in infancy here. So what happens in all of those stages to go up and look like this? So if you, at infancy, again, the psychosocial stages are, there are certain tasks. And when you complete those tasks, you go on to the next stage. So here's infancy, and here's toddlerhood. So what are the tasks of infancy? What are the tasks of infancy? So ultimately it's trust, right? Which Erickson gives us is trust versus mistrust. So how do we get to trust? How do we get to trust? Having your basic needs met. Absolutely. So this is about having your basic needs met. And again, a lot of that's physiological. So you're hungry or you want to be held, a variety of these things. So what do we call that? We call that nurturing. So basic need is to be nurtured. And if you're nurtured and your needs are met, you have a good sense of trust. And so chronologically, when you move to the next stage of toddlerhood, you trust that you can now become more what? Independent. Right, this is very much about independence or autonomy, as Erickson called it. Autonomy versus shame. So I didn't think I spelled that right, but close enough. So autonomy versus shame. So when you are more independent, is that you can move away from your caregiver because you trust that someone will be there for you and trust that your needs will be met. So you can explore the world, right? You can explore the world. And in the tasks of toddlerhood are to achieve that autonomy by having more independence. Okay, let's talk about something called the terrible twos. Not. You have a 2. You do have a 2-year-old, yes. So what is the 2-year-old doing?
No mommy, me do, no mommy, no.
Yeah, no, right? Because that's really saying, I'm separate from you. Mm-hmm. I'm independent from you. I don't want to do it your way. Mm-hmm. That's all a part exploring the new self. I'm no longer connected to my caregiver. That's what the no is about. We get to see it again about 12 or 13. It comes along, right? Yeah, because we get into that same thing a little later on about 12 or 13. No, you're stupid, you're dumb. Now we have words to add to that. About that, yeah. So the autonomy, the toddlerhood is about being separate from or being different than, but not too far. I'll go a little bit, but I'll come back because I trust that you're here. So I'm exploring my world. I'm finding out what everything's about. I'm into everything. I'm into everything. What's it made of? And when I get language around 3-ish, I start to ask a lot of questions. I got to, when my nephew, who's now older, but when he was little, and I loved, he had such great questions, and my sister would say, go stay with your Aunt Darla, because she'll answer your questions, because it was an endless, constant asking of questions, which I thought was delightful. As his aunt, I could do that. It was kind of thing. So they're always inquiring, they're asking, they're checking it out, and they have that sense of autonomy, which takes them into the next stage of early childhood, which is now about what? What happens around 5, 6? What's going on? They start school. So now they are actually separate from you, physically separate from you. They go to daycare or nursery school or kindergarten or whatever it is, and now they are starting to see themselves in the bigger community. And can they manage their own autonomy in that community? And can they trust? Can they trust? So when they have that, they can move into that. They have that bigger sense of autonomy. So they're now ready for school. They're ready for learning. They have initiative. Next stage, school age, initiative. They're interested. They make inquiry. They want to know things. And they can manage a learning environment. Are you following me about kids who can't do this? A lot of our kids can't do that. And so that for me is a trauma. It's the lost opportunity. So when I talk about this is normal development here, if you don't have your basic needs met, your development will not look like this. It will look something like you'll start out, but it just zigs and zags and it's all over the place. It's all over the place because you're trying to get your needs met that aren't grounded here. So kids have trouble in school. When I talk about 2 areas of trauma for our kids, I talk about primary trauma and secondary trauma. We deal most often with the secondary trauma of when they come into care, and we try to deal with the behaviors related to the abuse or the neglect, whatever brought them into care, but we also add to that by the frequency of moves. How many moves do kids have? How many homes do they live in? How many workers do they have? How many caregivers do they have? We have just expanded their confusion, their fears, their losses. That's the secondary. The primary trauma is here if my basic needs have not been met. So my primary trauma is the lost opportunity for this. I lose the opportunity for normal development. I'm trying to find my way, but I'm zigging and zagging all over the place. This is loss. The lost opportunity for normal development. Our children are struggling with that every day. They're trying to catch up. They're trying to make do in a school setting. They're trying to have relationships with other kids. They're trying to have relationships with families. And most of the time, they don't have a clue how to do that. They just don't have a clue because this is what's happening with them, not this. And we treat them as though they have this ability and capacity. They do not.